Deep in the jungles of Central America lies an ancient pyramid over 3,000 years old. It was once a place of worship for a society of around 2 million people who lived in what is today Belize. Modern-day India has been occupied by humans for at least 7 million years. That's right.
Ow.
Some of our earliest ancestors migrated to the region from Africa and made it their home. This continued until around 5,000 years ago, when the civilization we know as the Indus Valley Civilization began to take shape. Crops failed and the land became a desert wasteland. This would have caused starvation and prompted the people of Kush to flee. According to legend, it was once home to a powerful civilization known as Lanka. They ruled the surrounding areas of the Indian subcontinent before being driven out by the Aryans. In modern-day Iraq lies the ancient Sumerian city of Kish. After collapsing in 2350 BC, the region fell into darkness. Nobody knows what happened to the Akkadians or why their great empire fell apart so quickly. It wasn't like them to simply surrender or submit to another power. One of these kingdoms was the kingdom of Ely. They thrived for centuries until the river changed course. This caused the kingdom of Ely to collapse and their people to scatter. What's really amazing is that we only discovered the kingdom in 2017. It's believed that they were so thoroughly wiped out that archaeologists never even considered they existed. It's thought that this could have been caused by a massive flood or possibly an earthquake. Greece has been inhabited by humans for at least 7,000 years. During this time, numerous civilizations have risen and fallen. However, perhaps the strangest comes from the island of Euboea. In all likelihood, the city was wiped out by a sudden earthquake which caused the ground to collapse. This would have created a massive chasm which swallowed everything in sight. He found the ruins of a great city with crumbling buildings and no inhabitants. This lack of people is what puzzled Alexander so much. To him, it looked like the city had been deserted in haste. This is because it was the home of the patriarch Abraham. It's also known as the father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Sadly, over time, the land dried up and turned into a salty desert. It's thought that the relentless heat and dryness drove the population away, turning the city into a ghost town. It was also the last great city of the Mesopotamian empires. Ash and pumice rained down on the island and blocked out the sun. Crops failed and famine struck. Over the next few hundred years, the remaining buildings collapsed and the island was completely deserted. But even after all this time, it still exists. Today, it is uninhabited and covered in volcanic ash. But unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the island nation of Atlantis. One of their largest and most important cities was Harappa. It was likely the capital of the entire civilization and the seat of political power. According to Plato, Atlantis was a paradise in the Mediterranean Sea. He claimed that it was 9,000 miles around and full of wisdom and culture. Instead, the city had been slowly emptied out over decades as each family packed up and moved away. We don't know why they chose to leave, though. What we do know is that the city was rebuilt several times over the centuries. The island of Thera sits about 200 miles from the Greek islands of Santorini and Crete. Between 4000 and 1400 BC, it was home to a thriving Minoan civilization. It built impressive palaces, developed their own language, and traded with Egypt and other Aegean nations. But eventually, around 500 years ago, it was totally abandoned for good. It was possible that the changing course of the nearby rivers resulted in the destruction of their agricultural lands. They would fight to the death rather than let their land be taken. But eventually everything changed. The gods punished them by sinking their great cities beneath the waves. One theory is that the island was once a part of the island of Santorini, which was devastated by a volcanic eruption in 1650 BC. But this is just speculation. While Plato claimed that this happened 9,000 years before his lifetime, we have no evidence that it ever occurred at all. Many historians agree that Plato made the whole thing up to make a philosophical point. He said that the city was destroyed in a single day, when the earth shook and the ground split open. As the earth cracked, half of the city was swallowed up and everyone inside was killed. While Herodotus claimed that this was punishment from the gods, there is a more scientific explanation. Around 4,800 years ago, it was the largest metropolis in the world and had a population of about 5,000 people. It told a story of total devastation as the king spoke of his crops failing and his people starving. He pleaded with the gods for mercy, but sadly, it seems that none was given. The king and his people starved to death and their great civilization fell apart. These people would go on to form the Akkadian Empire, the first true superpower in human history. We have little information on the civilization except for what we have gleaned from religious texts like the Ramayana. Unfortunately, nobody knows exactly what happened to them, but we can assume that they tried to migrate southwards into fertile lands. There was a massive volcanic eruption which unleashed ash and debris across the island. This is because without the mighty river, their entire civilization would have been impossible. The Nile provided water for farming, set the calendar with its annual floods, and allowed trade to flourish. But between 4,400 and 3000 BC, the Nile didn't look anything like it does today. Could this have been the destruction of the lost civilization of Lanka? Perhaps they may have perished alongside countless others in the deluge of lava and poisonous gases. But unfortunately, we don't have enough information to say for sure. There's just no record of them after 1000 BC. Their cities were empty, and their greatest monuments were left to crumble in the desert sands. They were likely one of the most advanced societies of their time, with cities that had some of the first indoor plumbing. Today, however, no one knows where they went or why they were wiped out, but the civilization which built this pyramid disappeared without a trace. So why did nature wipe them out? And are there more civilizations that have suffered the same fate? Number 10. The Indus Valley Civilization. We discovered their settlements across what is today Pakistan and northwest India, and they were all pretty sophisticated. For example, they had public bathrooms, sewage systems, and even paved roads. However, by 1800 BCE, they had totally vanished. A few thousand years later, around 2,500 years ago, a new kingdom arose in the Nubian desert in what is today Sudan. The kingdom of Kush would become a regional powerhouse, expanding into Egypt itself and sacking the capital city twice. They would rule for hundreds of years until 2000 BC, when their decline began. And we do want to know if they were wiped out by natural disaster, or if they simply picked up and moved somewhere else. Archaeologists found no evidence of war or destruction. The cities were just abandoned overnight. No, 9. The kingdom of Kush. It's thought that climate change may have contributed to their demise as around this time. The region experienced a period of intense drought. 8. The island of Sri Lanka. 500 miles off the coast of India lies the island nation of Sri Lanka. However, geologists recently discovered evidence of a catastrophic event that occurred on the island around 1400 BC. Number 7. The Akkadians. For around 300 years, the Akkadians dominated Mesopotamia and even conquered parts of Turkey and Iran. Archaeologists uncovered a clay tablet from the final king of the Akkadians. Number 6. The Kingdom of Ely. The Egyptian Empire has been called the gift of the Nile. It had many small tributaries that crisscrossed the desert. This would have made navigating the river very difficult and would have led to the development of many small kingdoms along its banks. Regardless, the course of the river shifted, and the farmland near the riverbed was destroyed. 5. The island of Atlantis. The last 3 civilizations we have discussed actually existed. There is real evidence to prove it. He said that they were a seafaring people who explored the world until their greed got the better of them. But if Atlantis did exist, where might it be located today? Number 4. The mysterious city of Helak. Around 660 BC, the Greek historian Herodotus wrote about the once prosperous city of Helak. The island of Euboea sits on top of a major fault line. No 3 Harappa. We touched on the Indus Valley civilization earlier, but they had many cities of which we know very little. Sadly, we do want to know much about the city because it was largely abandoned by the time Alexander the Great came through the region. While he was right, there was no mass panic that caused the abandonment. Number 2. The city of your few places in the world are as holy as the city of Ur. Located in southern Iraq, it was once surrounded by lush vegetation and fertile farmlands. But the exact date of this is unknown. 1. The island of Thera. Then in 1650 BC, everything changed. A massive volcanic eruption on the neighboring island of Thera sent massive shockwaves across the region. It's believed that the people of Thera fled to the mainland, abandoning their island homes.